First, just by saying this meeting is being recorded by the Open Space Task Force of SGIC. And if any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify us at this time. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. And I'd also just like to invite everybody on this call, all members of this call of the public and the appointed members of the committee, also to participate at any time in this call. Let's just start with a roll call, and we'll go around the screen. Francoise, you want to start us off?
Yes, hi, I'm Marie-Françoise Hatt, member of the public of the SGIC and member of this task force.
Great. Pat?
Pat Sorrentino, and I'm a member of the task force.
Great. Patty? Oh, you're on mute there, Patty.
Hello, I'm Patty O'Neill. I am just a non-voting member of the task force.
Mary?
Yep, Mary Chickman. I'm a member of Sustainable Greenfield, and this is my last official meeting in that role.
Right, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Boss. I'm on the task force, and I am a member of the Conservation Commission for Greenfield as well.
Great. And Kent, introduce yourself.
Are you on mute
Oh,
still, Ken?
you're on mute there, Kent.
Try that again. I'm just a non-voting member. My interest is what's going to happen with solar fields in the open space. That's my shtick.
Excellent. Thanks all for being here and for modifying for anybody watching the recording. There's issues at City Hall with the facilities there. The restrooms are not fully operational, and so we had to switch this meeting to fully online. All right, our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the November meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Is there any edits, any discussion on those? It looked great to me. Thanks to Mary for being our initial note taker for the first handful of meetings of this task force. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other comments, are all in favor of approval?
Hi.
All right.
Well, I have to abstain because I wasn't at the meeting, so.
Oh yeah, great, great, excellent. All right. Thank you, Mary. All right, and moving on to the task force. So I did create this agenda that I created is I see somewhat as a template for us to use, try to make it somewhat general language that we could continue to use the same basic structure, and as specific things come up that we want to add in each month we can. But I thought I'd leave this on there of just talking about the membership and roles. The roles change of note, as Mary commented on, is that she'll be leaving SGIC. This is her last month. So thanks to Mary for helping to get this off the ground. Mary was a key part of getting this task force off the ground as the chair of SGIC. So thanks to Mary for all your work, and we very much hope to see you back here as a non-voting member in 2025 at some.
Thanks, Jonah.
Yeah. And thanks to Francoise, who has offered to step in as our note taker. Really appreciate you taking on that important role. And I think as we're here in December, and as I have in my mind put insufficient time into this task force, just note once again that I am the chair mostly because I feel like this is an important group, not because I have a ton of time to invest in it. And I would love for us to invest lots of time into this work So at any point, if any of this team is interested on taking on the role of chair, or if somebody new comes along who has some extra time and interest in taking that on, I am happy to cede this role to anybody who wants to take it on. Any other notes? Oh, I guess so. Patty, you mentioned in an email that you invited. Is it Allison?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes. So interested new member, perhaps.
Yeah.
Great. Any other conversations with potential recruits or new members of the committee?
I haven't really tried too hard, but I think I maybe could find more.
Great. Well, yeah, I think the way that we set this up is that there officially should be 3 representatives from SGIC, and Mary's leaving, so we will need to recruit somebody new from SGIC to join. So we'll see we have a SGIC meeting next week. Maybe we can mention it there to see if there's more interest from that group. But yeah, I think yeah, go ahead, Patty.
Would it be like absolutely necessary to be part of that committee too?
No, well, for that particular, so the one thing we have not gotten around is this concept of the voting members, which I think is not particularly relevant. Primarily, we vote on the minutes and adjourning is our biggest amount of voting that happens. So I think mostly we're interested in people that are interested in contributing. But in order to be a voting member at the moment, we do need that person replacing Mary to be a member of SGIC. So that's just the way we're currently set up.
Right. Like I wonder about changing the rules. I mean, I do get that probably being very looped in with what's going on in SGIC is why that is.
Well, it's actually, I think it's
no.
more because this is officially a task force of the SGIC. And so it is intended to be members of that group that are the makeup of this team. But since we wanted to include others, is why we've created this funny structure of voting and non-voting members. So I think the main way for us to make this change, and something that I think was sort of on the back burner for us, but is still on the list, is working to make a standalone open space committee for the city. And that way it would be, everyone would be mayorally appointed and everyone would be voting members. There's not been the appetite for creating of a new committee by any of our 3 mayors. So I think we would take a strong advocacy push and maybe a demonstration of a large group of interested new members that would get us there. But at the moment, there's not the interest to create the standalone. So that's why we have this sort of makeshift task force.
Do we have time to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, we can spend another couple minutes on it. What part?
I guess I'm curious, like what is it about a committee that the past 3 mayors haven't wanted to do, an open space committee? Like, and is a committee necessary? Could it just be something less than a task force and still just a group that works on this issue?
Well, so the first part, my understanding, and I've only just talked with the current mayor, but my understanding is all 3 mayors have expressed concern with filling spots. That nothing against an open space committee specifically, just that we have a number of committees that are composed of volunteers, and there's been challenges with filling all the spots on all the committees as is. So that's been my understanding of the concern about creating a new one. I don't know that there's a benefit to any lesser standing than this task force. Seems like we can function as an open space committee would. We do have, we are nested under SGIC, which provides some guidelines that we need to follow. But otherwise, I don't know that it's a problem for us. So I'm open to anything if folks have other ideas on how we'd want to do it. Yeah, Mary.
I just had two thoughts. One is because the Sustainable Greenfield is in the charter, that gives it a level of, officialness. And so then our task force, this task force then also has that level, that same level, and allows the group to have some expectation of interacting with people in charge in the city in a way that just an ad hoc group might not. Having said that, having led the Greenfield Tree Committee for a number of years, we have established a relationship with the city, even though we're not a city affiliated group at all. We're just an independent volunteer group. Actually, we just became a nonprofit. But the reality is that relationship really took, like probably 8 years to build to the point, or maybe 5 years, where we have had a good working relationship with the city. So I think it would depend upon having some people, if you wanted to do this kind of a thing outside of this structure, it would really depend upon people having the time to put a group together and really drive it forward. So it would need energy and structure that would come from a different place. So that's my only observation. It was a lot of work to get Greenfield Tree Committee to the point where it is now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think I'm happy we could discuss more of this at a future meeting if we want to give some more time to it. I think that would be totally reasonable. I think it is an important topic. All of the plans that exist mentioned creation of an open space committee, right? The OSRP and the master plan. They talk about how we should have a town open space committee. So this has been our workaround, which to get something off the ground. But I'm happy if we want to talk more about pushing for it to be a city committee, we can do that at some point. All right, so moving on, the next thing here is looking at our goals. I'm a goal-focused guy. I'd like us to just thinking of our meetings just being and just what we're doing. I think it's helpful for us to stay focused on what we're doing. So I figured it's probably good for us to leave it in here and to just spend a few minutes reminding ourselves and any new people who are watching or attending what we're focused on. And I will, and also for us this time to look at this next step, specific steps that I added. So I'm going to share my screen. So I guess as a reminder, the big few things that we decided to focus on from the open space and recreation plan, this first one of identifying, mapping, and working with different parts of the city to acquire new conservation land, and bringing various partners and funding sources together, helping facilitate a process of protecting new land. That's sort of the big first one. Second one being maintaining and improving city trails. And the third focus area is working with DPW and the planning department to secure funding for an analysis of impervious surfaces and slopes, thinking about managing the increasing rainfall. So those are the three priorities that we've decided to focus on, with a few second tier ones of supporting the growth of the volunteer program, advocating for the protection of farmland, and advocating for the completion of OSRP in various parts of the city government. So for these first three priorities, we did start to dig into them with next steps, and some of us have signed up for directly working on some of these, thinking that time between meetings we could work on moving some of these forward. So I think looks like folks have, oh, Emily, I sent this to you and I realized I sent it to a work address. I don't know if you have access to this
Oh, yeah.
through a Gmail.
Yeah, I'll need
You
to request access through the email that I use. So I'll do that, Jonathan.
Okay, great. Yep. So great that folks signed up for this for some different things. I guess I'd be curious in just discussing with folks how we see using this and working on this. So, for example, there's some things on here: develop relationships with regional land trusts, and inviting them to staff meetings. A couple of us expressed interest in moving that forward. Does it make sense that we would? So, for example, in this case, Francoise and I would just be in touch and say, "Oh yeah, let's invite Mount Grace to come to a meeting." Does that make sense as a way to move forward with this? That we would kind of work in these small groups that we set up to move some of these forward outside of meetings?
That seems if the efficient way to me,
Yeah.
to not do everything in the meeting, but do some work outside. Things that don't involve decisions, but like inviting people, contacting people. We can certainly do this on
Yeah.
our own time. Yeah.
Right.
And you and I, for instance, for this one, you can decide, well, I'll contact these and I'll contact those.
Right. Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
Would
Yeah.
it be allowed to meet with like a land trust rep outside of an actual meeting here? Like to call somebody, like if we were to assign a person to do that, or
Yep. Yeah, we can have those conversations outside of here, and then report back if it's something that is not just an invitation to come here. The thing that we want to avoid is some small group of us having a separate conversation outside of the meeting that's making decisions around our work that's not open to the public. But if we're moving these particular goals forward just by having conversations with people external to this group, my understanding is there's no problems with that as a part of this, and then we're reporting back. Great. So I think, I guess that then it would make sense to me that between meetings, and I recognize we're in an interesting time of year between meetings right now. There's some vacation for some folks, perhaps, and some time off and holidays and whatnot. So this may not be the most productive month between meetings, but in general, for us between meetings to plan to work towards advancing these next steps. And then I put, like in this particular one of determining criteria to prioritize, that we started this conversation in our meeting last time. I thought, some of these make sense for us to actively work on in the meeting versus just report back on any work that was done outside the meeting. So that one, for example, seems like it's good for us to spend a little time discussing here shortly. Any other comments on this? Does this feel like a good way forward for us to stay focused on these tasks and to try to move things forward between meetings?
yeah, I think so. I feel like when I was trying to brainstorm earlier before this meeting about the criteria, I felt like some of these other tiers were working their way into the criteria, but I'm not sure that that's I don't know if that's a bad thing or an avoidable thing.
Right.
I think there's going to be some overlap, but
Yeah, and I think it's a good point in that I think that we have really narrowed down what we're working on, and mainly because we're a small group and it's a huge master plan and OSRP that have tons of specific actions that we would like to see take place, but we need to focus somewhere. So I think at any point, if we're deciding, none of this is set in stone. If we're deciding that some other part of our OSRP or the master plan, if there's an opportunity for them, or we decide that there's a shift and we want to focus on them or include them in part of this, it seems like that would make sense to do.
While we're on this topic,
Yeah.
Who in the Greenfield organization would want to deal with what communities should be doing about solar fields coming into their area? Big topic, especially if you're in Wendell and other places.
Well, yeah, outside of Greenfield is outside of our scope here.
No, but what I'm saying, I'm giving Wendell as an example.
Oh, I see. Something like Wendell. Yeah. Who within Greenfield would be the folks to talk to?
Yeah, so I know it's going to
Yeah.
use a lot of open space. That's clear.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where this committee
Right.
might be interested.
I also heard a rumor that there might be some solar fields sited in Greenfield somewhere, but I haven't been able to find any actual like proof of that. And I
That are
and
in
also-
Greenfield?
I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah,
I forget where I heard it, and I haven't been able to find anything. I would think that would come up through the planning board first. Is that right?
Well,
Carol
yes.
Collins
Okay.
would be the point person, in the staff.
Not if it's private investment.
Wouldn't she
Yeah.
at least know about it?
So we might want to table this. The point is there are new state regulations, okay? And the planning board doesn't have a lot of sway in it anymore because the planning boards were taking years and years and years to approve anything. The state said, well, done, you've had your chance, you can't do that anymore. We got to get these solar fields out there. Okay, so it's now on short time frames, right? But there are things communities can do to prepare, for example, be proactive in where they want them to be rather than be reactive. So I don't want to go too deep into the subject, but let's just think about, it will impact open space. So it's clearly something for this committee. And I don't know where else. So I don't need an answer right now. I'm just giving you some background of the scope of the thing. This is really going to deal with a lot of space.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Ken. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. Let's just, I guess, for the sake of the agenda, we can bring that up. Maybe come back to it at the public comment time. If we have time at the end there, chat a little more about that. Yeah. Great. Okay. So moving on to this big section of the agenda that I figure would be the bulk of what we do each time is just working on moving our priorities forward as a group. And the first bullet I had was reporting back on any progress between meetings. Thanks to Mary. I know Mary sent out a few to-dos after the meeting. The one to-do that I had was to chat with our new conservation agent, Jessica, which I did. She's great, and Emily had already spoken with her with the Conservation Commission. She's still very new and getting up to speed and learning. I think learning a lot of the wetlands regulations is sort of a key focus for her right now with her role with the Conservation Commission. She was very interested in this work, so went to her specifically around the creation of a map of priority parcels to protect in the city. And we know that her predecessor created a map that we have a picture of. Basically, we have a PDF of it and a list of the criteria, but we don't really know much more than that. She said she found the file. It is a QGIS, which is I believe a free GIS program. So it's not ArcGIS, which she is not familiar with QGIS. So she hasn't been able to look at that file to understand it a little better yet, but she is very interested in creating a similar map in ArcGIS that can be an ongoing tool for the conservation agent. Yeah, Mary.
Well, typically those QGIS files can be imported into ArcGIS, so that shouldn't be
Oh.
a problem.
Okay, great. Yeah, maybe I'll shoot her an email and let her know that, because I think she wasn't quite sure what to do with the file she found. So I will, yeah, I'll let her know she can try to just import that.
I missed
Great.
a little of that. For the minutes that are being taken right now, is it possible to see those happening in real time? I can
No,
follow along.
no. It's no.
What do you want? You missed something, Patty? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. Her name and just some of the problem that you were.
Yeah, so I was going, so her name is Jessica Siegel, I think. And
Yes.
she's our new conservation agent. Unfortunately, the city only has funding for a part-time, so she's, I think, 20 hours a week. And with that limited time, she's been getting up to speed primarily with wetlands, and because she supports the Conservation Commission. But she is very interested in this project of creating a map of protected, of a goal for protected land.
What was the map issue that she was having? Just the QGIS file?
There's a pre-existing map that the previous conservation agent made that is of a conservation, a priority protection plan of some kind, which we just have a list of the criteria that he used, but we don't quite understand fully how he made the map. So we were hoping that she could open that and just have a look under the hood and better understand how he went about creating that map. But we also have interest in, as we talked about in our last meeting, expanding the criteria that he had used. So she's interested in working with us to create a new map. I don't know. I think we just have to figure out the logistics of this, but I think she has limited capacity. She welcomes our help on this and working together with her. But we just need to, I think the first step is us talking about what those criteria are, which I think we could do some now, try to move that forward and share that with her. And then I think we just need to figure out the logistics of what that shared map is. If she wants to own it, which probably makes sense for her to own that file, and then make a version that she can share with us. So anyway, that was my conversation with her. She's interested. She doesn't have a lot of time. She's interested in working on this as she has time, and welcomes our help in thinking about making such a map. Any other reporting back from anything else that happened since our last meeting?
Do you have, can you bring up is it something that is in a table as well?
What's that?
The projects and who was going to do what?
Oh, we didn't, as far as between these two, I don't think we had that list that I had shared previously. I don't think there was any expectation for people moving those forward between the last meeting and this one. It was more just starting to sign up. But let's see, was there something else that, Mary, you had sent a couple other things out with?
I know that I had, when I read, that, and I saw this, the piece about volunteering, I decided I joined the Resilient Greenfield and will attend their next meeting, because I feel like that would be a very good group to use for, getting more volunteers in Greenfield.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So
Yep, that sounds good.
yeah, I think it's
this is the
January.
list. It was pretty, not a lot of stuff. I think determine the new note taker, which we did. We had Mary had put possibly submitting a letter of interest to serve on SGIC for Pat. If I don't know, Pat or Patty, I think had both maybe considered that, but possibly submitting a letter if there was interest. Then the work that I did, and then Mary, it says you had asked FERCog if they have updated any trail maps.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I got something from someone. I feel like it was somebody in this group basically saying that they're in the process of doing that. So the GIS specialist has, oh, maybe it was Francoise who sent me something. Yeah. That, I think my understanding is that Ryan, who's the GIS specialist, has done some of the groundwork of, mapping the trails, but then there's going to be an element of public outreach to determine which trails should stay and let me say it a different way, which trails should be marked and established as official trails, because there's quite a wide network of do-it-yourself trails throughout Highland and Temple Woods. So it sounds like it's going to be a process of probably a couple of years, so nothing very soon. And here's Allison. She might actually have some information about what Ryan's working on related to trails in Highland Park. Maybe not, I don't know, but hi, Allison.
Hi, nice to see you all.
Hi, Allison.
Can I ask for note taking, Allison, your entire name, please?
Yeah, sorry, I can't change my name from FERCog to. My name is Allison, Allison, Gage, Gage.
Okay,
And although it says FERCog, I'm just here as a Greenfield resident.
okay.
Thank you. As for what Ryan is working on, I don't know. The last I heard, he was still mapping the trails back there. He thought he was done and then found some more. So I think that's still ongoing.
And Ryan, what's Ryan's last name?
Clary, Clary. He's the GIS specialist at the FERCog.
Great.
Okay.
And that's
I
something.
mean, 2 years, I'm wondering, that's a long time. Is that something that volunteers could help with?
I think if it's just the mapping that you're asking about, I'm pretty sure it's close to being done. And it's something Christy was working with him on it.
Yeah.
So the couple of years is because they want to do public meetings?
I think it's just been taking a while to map. I could ask
Another
him.
couple of years.
No,
Okay. Yeah,
it should be done soon.
Oh, good.
Yeah, sorry, it's been going on, but it should be done soon.
So Allison, it's Mary. My understanding was that there would be a series of public meetings once Ryan was done. Sorry to put you on the spot here as soon as you arrive. And maybe you don't know, but it sounded like after he finished the mapping, which it sounds like it's pretty close to being done, then there would be some public meetings for people to weigh in on what they wanted the official trails that would actually have, blazing and signs for, and then maybe de-emphasize some of the do-it-yourself trails that are out there. That's what I understand anyway.
Gotcha. I haven't heard anything about that. I know he's been meeting with Christy, so she would probably be the best person to follow up with.
Thank you.
Who's going to follow up with?
Who's gonna follow up with Christy?
Yeah.
I'm happy to, actually. I think I have on my list to follow up with her on something else. So
Thanks.
Yeah. Welcome, Allison. We're in the middle of our working on our priorities. We've whittled down. I'm not sure how much you've been looped in on what we're up to, but we've whittled down our priorities, and I'm happy to share, or maybe for us to chat sometime after this meeting, talk a little bit more about it. If you are Patty mentioned that you might be interested in becoming a part of this task force. Is that true?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would be.
Okay.
I'm happy to help. I worked on the Greenfields OSRP already. Was that 5 years ago? So yeah, happy to help carry it forward.
Great.
Now that I
Awesome.
moved to Greenfield a year ago. So yeah.
Oh, nice. Welcome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks. Yeah, we can chat more about how this group is working, and I can fill you in on that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So let's see. So that's what we've done between meetings. So the next thing on the agenda was to look back at the criteria for our land protection plan, and try to move that a little more forward. And I can share this tool, share my screen, the tool that Mary had created and we were looking at last time. So just to refresh folks' memory, this is the tool we were looking at last time that Mary went through and looked at various city plans and various conservation priorities across the top here, and put a check if that priority appeared in that plan. And we went through and looked at ones where there was a trend, like flood storage was mentioned in 5 different plans. So we looked at these different criteria that were mentioned. We talked about, and I think I put down below here what we would see sort of from that as the priorities that we might look at. We had talked about, I think wildlife had been mentioned in a few different ways, and we talked about using the biomap layer, although there are various biomap layers at this point, but using biomap as the tool that's intended to focus us in on looking at various criteria for conservation. So using that as a key criteria. We had mentioned priority habitat layer as well, which I believe is a part of biomap. Flood storage was mentioned as a priority, although we weren't quite sure how we would use that how we would find that in a mapping tool. So I think we just need to maybe explore that a little bit more, how we would learn what parcels were the priorities for that. We had talked a bit about agriculture. It is a priority in a lot of plans. I think our focus had been a little more on conservation land and forested land, wetlands, but it is a priority that's listed, and we do have some unprotected agricultural lands in Greenfield that we can look at. So, and then adjacency to existing protected lands was talked about in environmental justice communities. These were the ones that I took away as sort of a focus area for us after the last one. And before I open it up, I'll just share once again to refresh our memories. This is what the last conservation agent had started to work on. This was the map that he had put together and the criteria that he had looked at, the priority habitat, including estimated wetlands, streams, riverfront. This no buildings. We're not quite sure what he used to determine that, or what exactly that criteria meant for this color scheme. He has vernal pools and adjacent to conservation land. So that's what he was looking at, which I think we had said we liked a lot of these, but wanted to expand a bit on them. So let's just open it up here and talk a bit more about this. What do folks think about this list, and what's it missing, and edits that we need to make?
I thought about a lot of similar things. And kind of that, like, we'll have a lot of these and maybe some more. I shared a document that had some of the other ones that I was thinking of, if you want to look. But I can also just read it
Oh, yeah, we're not, let's see, you shared it in the chat?
Yeah, I also shared it into the folder.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you want to read it, just so it's on record here, the chat is not on record.
Okay.
So if you want to read it out to us, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm imagining like several different maps, and maybe some of them will layer over each other. And then from those layers, we'll have kind of more narrow, like qualifying criteria. I was looking at the farmland conservation report that what are they called? Mount Grace worked on.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And I liked the way that they ranked some of those things. It was like from 1 to 5, and 5 was like high quality, like maybe a lot size would be like one qualifier. Anyway, I'll just go through the maps first and then kind of what I'm imagining for qualifiers. So calling them conservation elements. So undeveloped parcels of the Greenfield residential zones map that you made, Allison. I thought that would be a great one to layer. Nested under that, I have housing and zoning changes to consider, like the unprotected farmland map from Mount Grace, the agricultural soils map from Mount Grace, urban, suburban, residential map from FERCog. Another consideration would be where new highways, roads, and bike lanes and railways might be. A regional wildlife corridor map from Mass Wildlife. I'd like to see if I can get that and get some like shape files for the wildlife mortality map and see like where there's a lot of travel happening already. That seems like something to maybe improve. Energy siting, like you brought up, Kent.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to look at the new climate bill. Mary, I think you shared a solar siting report once that I haven't gotten a chance to look at yet, but there could be other things. But yeah, that bill just passed, so I want to see what they ended up allowing, because I know that the in Shutesbury their town passed a bylaw, and then the private landowner and the company sued Shutesbury. So I'm not sure where that's at right now. And I hope that the bill didn't, I don't know, we got to see what they decided about that.
I'll give you the long and short of that.
Sure.
Basically, you can't do things like that anymore to put big roadblocks up and take a lot of time. Yeah,
you can't pass a bylaw?
You can't pass one that prevents. Yeah, it's difficult to say NIMBY, 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 NIMBY. Everybody's saying not in my backyard, right? So that's why it's more difficult for towns to say that now. So that's the long and the short of it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't quote unquote unreasonably prohibit solar.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so maybe having this map, I'm hoping will be really helpful. Like we'll have really solid reasons for why we don't want to site it there, because it's like a wildlife corridor. It's like really important conservation land for all of these reasons. So
exactly.
That's a big part of why I think the
Yeah.
map like this is so important.
Yeah, just to quickly add it. So part of the new climate bill is to have the DOER do a site suitability analysis that would hopefully inform future solar siting. So that process is TBD. And I think if we had something that could show what our priorities are, that would give us a leg up.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to repeat. I guess my concern is that they're going to be redoing a lot that's already been done. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I thought maybe having a map, land suitable for solar, but also I want to look at any kind of like decentralized energy, and at least have that like on record. You know, we have other options. The next element I wrote was environmental justice communities map. And I'm not sure how they determined that. I know that I saw one. I think it
Yeah.
was in the open space plan.
Yeah, there's a state layer, and there's different criteria if it's, based on income,
Mhm.
by race and by language barrier. And so they rank them based on if there's 1, 2, or 3 of those different elements met. So Greenfield has 2 zones, has one that's just income and one that's I think minority / income. So that, yeah, there is a layer that exists there. I'm sure there's more to it that we can delve into, but that's the basic
Yeah.
tool.
I wonder if being in a flood zone would be one, a new one. I also added Indigenous stewardship value, and I mentioned Executive Order 126, which allows a tribal people to hunt, fish, and gather, and they often run into a lot of bureaucracy and have to file special permits to do this. So I would like to, I think that would be good to consider. Does it have stewardship value, and see where that maybe makes sense. And I thought we could reach out to No Loose Braids that does a lot of that hunting and gathering, and also the Native Land Conservancy, because they might be able to help maybe with funding. And yeah, I'm just thinking a lot about like stewardship as a big part of the conservation. Another element, conserved lands map. And that could include public and private conservation easements. So this is like a lot of maps. So this like may not all like be able to layer on one map. So we might have several. And this could, I'm imagining this could be like a process where we like are seeing how some relevant things overlap together, and then kind of narrowing down further how the priorities seem to be shaping out, like where they're overlapping a lot. Which is why I think being able to see some of this mapping and then like take it a step at a time. And maybe we could even get together and do some mapping together. That could be fun. And so for the qualifiers, we should be like a ranking of like 1 to 5 threat level of development. Like I noticed that the rural residential areas in the northwest part of Greenfield, I think it was on the open space plan, those were highlighted in orange as like identified already as like pretty high quality and also undeveloped and unprotected. So that could have like maybe a 5 category. Lot size, if it's a large lot, that's large habitat value. Adjacency to conserved land, but also clusters of conserved land. I think I don't want those to be missed, because maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of way that we could try to do that.
Could you say that one again? What, I missed that first word. What of conserved land?
Clusters.
Oh, clusters. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure how exactly that would work to like program, but just something to think about. Within a wildlife corridor, I really want to make sure that we're noting that. Within an aquifer, proximity to water supply, wetland, river, flood zone, and I guess whatever makes sense these days to think about. Flooding, like the 100-year and 500-year flooding maybe isn't so rare anymore, and I would like to have an updated concept of what flooding we can expect. And that seems like it's going to be a lot of places that have development already. So maybe those aren't places that we're conserving, perhaps. But I'm just, when I went on the Miller's meadow field trip with Green and Greenfield. I haven't heard about any plan for like a kind of managed retreat and helping people who live in flood zones and businesses that have their businesses in flood zones cope with that. I don't know, something to think about. Proximity to environmental justice communities and stewardship opportunities. And for that, I'm thinking of like possibly having first, the indigenous organizations are already stewarding, like uplifting their ability to do that, kind of making it easier for them to do that. And then neighborhood commons, associations, maybe cooperative or nonprofit, whatever makes sense. But I think an idea that I would like to explore is how people can be taking care of conservation land that is still like useful to them. Like there's native plant agriculture that exists, and also like harvesting, and that can kind of accomplish several things. That can manage invasive plants while you're doing all that. It can be a way to have people maintain and tend the land, which also improves like abundance to be trimming all the time. Foraging, harvest, grazing. I wonder about at the ag committee, somebody said if everybody had a milking goat or 2 milking goats, that would be wonderful. And so I know that they're like, it would be cool. I'd like to explore grazing and like sustenance as the resilience method. And then even shared meals, like having like community building through all of this, I think. So that's what I got.
Impressive.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I think there's a lot of good ideas in there. I think some are maybe supporting ideas, and some are like specific layers or criteria that we would add in. So yeah, I think that's great. I think, in thinking about what our end product, I mean, I think it would be a living map and wouldn't necessarily be an end product, but what we're going for, what I'm picturing at least, would be similar to what the previous conservation agent created, which just share again here for reference, with this, so he has protected land in green, and then there's a color coding of priority with the darker red, I believe, being a higher priority. So there's, maybe 3 or 4 shades that would indicate how important that particular parcel is to protect. So I guess that's what I see as an outcome that we would get together.
Yeah, me too.
A bunch of criteria that we would look at together. At some point, there would be a parcel by parcel review and say, okay, this one checks 5 of those boxes. It's going to be a top priority. Is that what others agree that's what we're working towards? Is there another vision of what our end product would look like?
Yeah, I'm definitely imagining it looking ultimately like that. I think
Yeah.
I'm just imagining several other maps before we get to the final.
Yeah.
Because I did this same sort of project for South Hadley, and we got like for the Conway School, and we did like several maps before we got to the ultimate like shade map. And it definitely helps to see like what happened and what another thing, the different regions that the update that they mentioned in the update, I wonder if maybe we might have some different criteria to think about, and like depending on what kind of sector it is. I'm referring to the 2024 Conway Master Plan update, where there's like the northwest chunk is the rural residential agricultural area, and then the northeastern top is forested residential, and then we have urban below and the big box stores. So yeah, maybe conservation means something different in those. I don't know.
I think that, yeah, that's an interesting point. Mary, is that, you have a new topic, or is that related to that?
No, just I'm sort of curious what Emily is thinking, because there's all of the criteria, right, that we talk about that's important, but I know that Emily knows the reality of just opportunity and, you know, sort of circumstance that when a parcel becomes available or, you know, something comes up, I guess, you know, I'm curious about how our talking about various criteria intersects with the reality of everyday life and what's available to conserve.
Yeah, I think that is it's where the pedal hits the metal or the wheel hits, whatever that appropriate metaphor is. I think one of the important things about the type of mapping that Patty's talking about, that we're all talking about here, is to provide the arguments for those funding opportunities as they come up, whether it's CPA or MVP or any other type of funding. But then, you know, some of the steps that Jonah put down are where it's really going to happen, are doing the outreach to the conservation organizations that can hold the easements, making the decisions about what kind of easements we want to hold. So some of the things we need to think about too are capacity for that work, the funding sources that would make that happen, figuring out who would be responsible within the town or within the city. Or if we want to find other third-party partners, seeing who's willing. And then there's the question of who's willing in terms of the landowners. And I honestly think it's really great to do mapping and prioritizing in a public way. The earlier we engage people, the better. That's always a gap, you know, no matter what you're doing when you're working on public projects. So I feel like this process, if we find ways to, you know, have gatherings at the library or, you know, public ones to have people put, you know, their stickers on their neighborhood or wherever they're interested in, the more we could get people aware of the process that we're doing, the more likelihood we have of early on getting people out who are interested, who then we can say, oh, you've got a property they were interested in and you're willing. So so maybe we can see how this process can help foster that.
Yeah, those are good points. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, that I would just add that a couple other benefits of this is that what my understanding is that the conservation land that we have in the city, the majority of it has been landowners coming to us as far as more recently protected land. And so one benefit of this process is that we could be a little more proactive, and we could say, oh, here's some key parcels that we see as real top priority. Let's do some outreach to landowners and start the conversation with folks who may not be thinking about putting a conservation restriction on their land or even selling for conservation. So I see that as one real benefit of this. And then the way that we use it a lot at Mass Audubon is opportunities to protect land come up, and we have to determine if we want to invest in them or not. And so this can be a helpful tool for us to already have this map. And then someone comes along and says, hey, I want to sell my land for conservation. And we can look at the map and be like, oh, that's not a priority for us. If we have this one grant that we want to apply for this year, we would prefer to focus on a different parcel with that money. So just other ways of using this tool.
And also having the other conservation organizations engaged is a way to spread our net too, because they're the people that people will go to first when they're thinking about conserving their land. So we might have people in Greenfield talking to Mass Audubon or NAFR trustees or Franklin Land Trust. And so if they know what our priorities are and what our funding sources are, they can incorporate those into their conversations with people.
Yeah, I think those are good points. Thanks for bringing that up, Mary. And just back to Patty's last point about the potentially different criteria for different parts of the city. I thought that was kind of interesting. I hadn't really been thinking about that. I had been I've been contemplating this concept of the urban core and environmental justice areas in that as a criteria, as a priority for us for more open space. That space does not overlap for the most part with our other criteria, right? Like biomap is not on Federal Street for, that kind of, so it's like we need to, I think it's a great idea for us to think of carving out and making our map, making maybe an environmental justice specific open space map, or one that's maybe environmental justice / flood management, and then the outskirts of town, or like the river corridor, which is really, the one that flashes when you put some of these layers on Greenfield. The Green River corridor is what really lights up as far as priority habitat and biomap, as well as the ridge, of course, in the east. So I like that idea a lot, Patty. I think that's worth us exploring how we would do that.
I agree. The size of the property in that region might be really different than if we're looking at other parts of the town. And then also, if we're able to make headway on the flood storage analysis of the town, that could really inform that particular map. So yeah, I definitely agree that it would be good to have mapping and criteria that's sensitive to the area.
Yeah.
It might also be more expensive in those more urbanized, developed areas as well. So we might have to leverage other sources of funding to be able to afford it.
Yeah, good point.
I wonder if acquisition is not the plan, maybe the goal for some of these different areas. Maybe maybe there's just best management practices for whatever we can say that urban ecology is, what promotes a kind of healthier urban ecology, what helps with connectivity, I love those salamander underpasses, and just there's different wildlife even in urban areas, and I think it'd be really cool to call attention to what people, or what opportunities maybe the city and other departments might have to promote that could be making windows bird safe, or deciding about not really bright LED lights, and little things that we can say yeah, land, maybe we're not buying land, and we're not having a whole landscape, but we're helping nature and making this a city that is contributing to the greater ecological resiliency of this area.
Absolutely. Yeah. That'd be an outreach component, which we haven't really, I think it's in some of the plans. It's definitely in multiple plans. So we haven't prioritized it for us, but yeah, I think, we've been talking primarily about acquisition. One, because there's a state grant for municipalities combined with the CPA funds that together could provide quite a bit of funding towards acquisition, or restriction, conservation or agricultural restrictions. We've been talking about those as our primary focus, I think, for this map. But I do like the idea of, especially as our capacity grows, theoretically, that we could have folks that focused on outreach. If we could bring in that skill set and excitement from folks who had that could focus on that, would be great.
Yeah, and I wonder if as we're going through all of this research and development, that we have a kind of catch-all for all this information we find out along the way. So maybe like we can just build that as we go, like kind of a map or outline of opportunities, like funding and stuff. Like imagine there's a lot that will come up and that maybe people already know. Maybe this could be something the public could help. Maybe like Green and Greenfield, and there's a lot of people who would do this on their own without necessarily being part of the committee task force, I think.
Like partnerships
Yeah.
with all those groups and with nonprofits and land trusts are really critical, because we're just a small task force that's trying to identify the priorities and then I think really activate those who can take action. And like Mary's point earlier about how do we actually do the process, or how do we find the people who are willing to do it, those are very long, time consuming, sensitive negotiations that have to happen. So it'll be really good for us to think in terms of how are we shaping the information that can inform what people do, and then maybe creating coalitions around those things. Like Patty, I think that there's already a nice pollinator corridor plan for Greenfield that Green and Greenfield has done. And that really brings to mind what you were talking about in terms of stewardship, where we aren't going to be purchasing or getting interests, but that we can, raise up the ideas that people have and to empower people in their own backyard or front yard. Just like Greenfield Tree Committee has been doing, working with the city to create the resources to allow people to plant trees at a low cost. So.
Yeah. Great. Well, looking at our time here, I just want to think about how do we want to finalize or move forward this criteria process. What are folks' thoughts on how we could move it forward?
Mark is who's going to actually do the mapping. I'm sorry, Pat. I didn't
Okay.
cut you off, but that seems like a really critical piece. Are we going to ask Ryan to do it? Are we going to partner with Franklin Land Trust or ask Audubon to do it? Are we going to one of us do it? And then we'll be sort of feeding information to whoever is the person who's doing that actual activity. So maybe, or if Jessica Siegel doesn't have a lot of time right now, unfortunately. So that seems like a top thing is to identify a person or persons who can help us with that actual activity.
Yeah. Elson.
I'd be happy to help with the mapping. I have access to that in pretty much all of these data layers. And it sounds fun. So I'm happy to help out.
Well, welcome aboard. Awesome. Thank you.
I don't have
to learn how to do this. I'm going to tag along.
Yeah. If you want to work on it together, Patty, that would be great. I don't have, we could get going on it, but I don't have a ton of time before the end of the year.
But that's fine.
Generally, this sounds like a fun project.
Are you familiar with are you fluent in using QGIS? I think.
No, I've never used QGIS. I have ArcMap. So if you wanted, I think the advantage of using QGIS would mean that we could all use it and access it. So I'd be happy, while we're doing it, if we want to try and learn it together, then we can.
Yeah, I used it a little bit, but it's been years, and I think that would be great to keep it accessible and it be passed along, and that'd be cool.
Is there a way? And we were talking earlier about how you could upload a QGIS into ArcMap. Is there a way to go the other way? Can you save a version from Arc that would be usable in QGIS?
I imagine you could just export all. Mary says yes. So yes.
Okay, because I know Jessica, our new conservation agent, was very interested in being a part of it in the mapping. I know she also doesn't have a lot of time, so I think she would welcome, I'm sure, us to be taking a lead on it, but it would also be nice to share it, have it maybe ultimately live with the conservation agent would make sense. And she uses ARC. So I mean, I think I could see it making sense to use if we're allowed to, I mean, if we're able to download it for folks who want to access in QGIS, that we can do that. But for you to work in ARC, I think would be totally fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for offering to do that. So I guess the question would be, you know, that we've talked about a lot of different criteria to include. Yeah, I don't know if you wanted, maybe you could just take a crack with this conversation and these notes that we've made and some of Patty's thoughts, and just we could use it as a starting point, and you could take a crack at it, and over the coming meetings we could just have a look at as the work progresses and give input. Does that seem like the way to go? Just sort of work as we go, as opposed to try to determine a final list of criteria in advance of mapping?
Yeah, I think seeing some of these layers on a map will be really helpful, so we can see just like,
Yeah.
there's just a giant blob mess, then we can, work backwards.
Yeah, great. Awesome.
I think Pat has something to say.
Thanks. I was just thinking, for me anyway, I'm a more visual person, and it would be helpful if, I don't know if this would work for people, if we had maybe even at the next meeting, or had a meeting, you know, an extra meeting planned to look at some of the maps, because, you know, I looked at Mass Mapper myself over the last week or so, you know, with all the data layers, mostly looking at biomap. And, you know, there's just, you know, a bajillion layers out there to look at. And it can get pretty crazy pretty quick. So
Yeah.
I don't know if people are interested in that. That's my thought.
I think that's great. Yeah. I mean, if Allison and Patty are taking a first crack and getting things together, then we could look at it together. We could have time here where we just share at the screen and all look at those maps together. Would be awesome. That sounds good to me.
Would meeting in person feel better or not to people?
For these meetings they'll be hybrid as whenever we're able. We're just not able at the moment. So wait until City Hall gets their bathrooms fixed. So I think the plan would be that we would stay hybrid.
And I wonder if we did want to get together in the library or something, is that allowed? Or does it have to be like a city building?
If we were to have one of our meetings, you're saying, in the library?
Yeah. Well, maybe
That's
it
allowed.
might be another building.
Is allowed, yeah.
Yeah. What's just to have it be, to invite others, you mean, to make it a location that more of the public would want to come to?
Maybe. I guess I'm kind of like wondering what a meeting where we're looking at maps might be like. Like, we're having like kind of where we've gotten so far. Are we toggling on and off layers? Do we want to like be kind of like having a map working like meeting, or and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
eventually getting people to, you know, more public, sure. But
I also suggested meeting in person and looking at some paper maps together, because it is difficult to look at maps, especially if we're on little screens or whatever. So
yeah,
having some in front of us would be a nice way to go.
be nice to point to things too, I imagine.
This would have to
And
be
circle things and all that kind of stuff, yeah, that you can't do remotely.
Yeah, I think
but this would have to be one of our regular meetings. We can't meet
Mhm.
outside of our meetings, right?
Right.
Or
Well,
can we?
we can schedule additional meetings and make it public, but yeah, it would have to be one of our announced meetings. Yeah.
And
So,
how,
But Pat, yeah, go ahead, Pat. You're trying to get in there.
yeah, so John, I'm confused, because I thought we could meet, like, one of the things we were gonna do with the priorities was to meet in like subgroups. And as long as we're not making a decision, we can do that.
Yeah, I'm a little unclear. I don't know if anybody has more clarity on where the line is on what can be done outside of one of these meetings.
Yeah, if you don't have a quorum, so if it's just two people, for instance, what do we need for a quorum? 2 or 3?
3 for this group, yeah.
Okay, so if it was 2 people meeting and not making any substantive decisions, that would be okay. But then they could bring whatever they did back to the larger group. That's within open meeting law.
No deliberation.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Okay. Does that feel good to move on from that? We have somewhat of a plan. I think it's safe to say at this point, our next meeting is in January, January 9th, which there's a few things going on between now and then. So I think it's fair to have our expectations be low between what happens between now and then. If anybody wants to chip away at anything, great. If not, it can be a time that we just get back together and sort of refresh where we're at for the new year. Okay. Where are we on our agenda? So we're out of time for this. I think I've
We wanna
left
talk
on our
about solar?
in a minute we'll get to it in public comment. But they're just looking at our agenda here. I left on there discuss specific potential projects just as something that's an ongoing bullet point on there, which we don't have time for now, which we had talked about a couple meetings ago, but just that is the exciting part of this more than the planning, but like, oh, here's an actual parcel that we were thinking about protecting. So I think that's something we'll leave on there for future discussions as different opportunities arise. And then I also have on there the suggesting best ways to move our priorities forward in the next meeting. I don't know if we have suggestions or if we want, maybe since we won't be able to get a lot done between now and the next meeting, it could be an opportunity of a time for us to invite somebody to come and talk with us and meet us and talk about the projects what we're working on. Does that sound like a good use of our time in the January meeting?
It does to me.
So we had talked about folks from Franklin, Mount Grace being sort of top priority. I know Mount Grace is going through transition in their conservation team, so maybe we're not in a rush. They're actually, they're coming to Mass Audubon now. Their conservation lead is now coming to Mass Audubon, so I think they're in the hiring process. Emily, I don't know if it makes sense to.
I think it'd be great to
Elaine.
have us be joined by one of the actual land staff now. I used to do it and I've moved out of that role, so it'd be excellent to bring some of them into the conversation since they would be being more active with the outreach. So I will let them know about the next meeting, and I'm sure that either Elaine Peteroy or Liam Cregan would be happy to attend if they can.
That'd be great.
Excuse me, which one are we talking about? Mount Grace now?
Franklin Land Trust.
Franklin, okay.
Yeah, both those are the two regional land trusts that both kind of overlap in Greenfield.
Right. I just keep forgetting who Emily is. Her paying work is with.
Yeah, great.
And it's Franklin. Franklin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Emily, what kinds of things do you think they might want to have from us, if anything, at the next meeting? Or like what do you envision them saying to us?
I think they'd be interested to hear about the priorities we've identified so far. I think they'd be interested to hear about the different areas and themes in the town that we're interested in conserving. And just to start familiarizing themselves. Once we get the maps and our criteria, we could just share those with them, and that would be, perfectly helpful for them to be able to field calls that come in. And then if we have some kind of, outreach based on some funding we raise or a set of priorities we identify, then they could be aware of that ahead of time so they could fit it into their schedule for land protection outreach in the area.
And I think it's safe to say in general, Franklin Land Trust and Mount Grace haven't been especially focused on Greenfield. And so I see it as an opportunity just to start building that relationship up and letting them know that this is something we're thinking about and working on and wanting to wanting them to be involved here more. So.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm a little worried that we might not have too much developed, like in the way of like maps yet.
Oh yeah, I don't think we're not going to be digging into the details. I think it would be it's more of conservation work is a lot of relationship building as a big part of it. And so I think this is more just like the beginning of our relationship building with the different land trusts. So it'd be great actually. Maybe I'd invite Jessica too. It'd be great for Jessica to start to have relationships with them. So
yeah, that would be cool. I'm also remembering that I think his name is Seth that was at the Stone Farm visit once. That Mount Grace works with no loose braids, and so that could be really interesting to hear. I know that they have like a whole program, a whole person who's been coordinating with Indigenous like stewardship. So I'd love to hear how they're thinking about that. And
yeah,
maybe I would be down to reach out to them again.
yeah, maybe that would be for our next meeting. So Aaron, was it Aaron, I think, who was on at that meeting with us? He's the one who's left Mount Grace and is coming to Mass
There was
Audubon.
also Seth.
Seth?
Mm-hmm. I think there was also Seth. I think that's
Okay.
Something that I
Great. Yeah, great. We can reach out to him too. Yeah, I would maybe for the February meeting.
So save the reaching out for the next meeting.
Yeah, just say if we're going to ask Franklin for the next one. Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, sounds good.
Great. Okay.
And Jessica?
And Jessica.
Did you say?
Yeah,
And Jessica.
yeah, she has limited hours. I don't know if she'll be able to join, but I'll offer after.
Yeah.
So any announcements is the next thing on the agenda before we jump into public comment and solar. Any
Well, I wonder,
announcements?
does the time work for you, Allison, since you're going to be joining?
A regular meeting time or a time to meet with you to talk about the maps?
4:45 meeting time.
I have a recurring meeting on Thursday, so I would never be able to join sooner than 5:15.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. If maybe you and I, Allison, could find a time to chat after this, so you're fully up to speed with this group. And then we could all touch base. There's the scheduling of the city hall space is a limiting factor, but we can work on that for the new year. So great. All right. Public comment, and seeing as there's no other members of the public here, we'll turn it to Kent to talk about solar siting.
Okay, so I've been working on, in general, where it's beneficial to put solar in battery facilities and where not. And I've been working with some people that really know why forests are important for sequestration and stuff. And I finished a study about how much CO2 is in the atmosphere if you put a solar farm in the forest or you put it outside the forest, that sort of stuff. And basically, it's bad to put the solar farm in the forest. There are some, if it's a really young forest, then it might be, but in general, it's bad. Yeah. But people are putting solar farms in forests. So there's On the other hand, it might be good to put solar farms on farmland. Okay. People say, well, yeah. So these are counterintuitive things. Like, for example, farmers may have land that's not very productive. If they put solar farms on it, they might be in business a few years from now, rather than the whole thing going under, that sort of stuff. There are counterintuitive, stuff like that. So that's what I work on. And so I'm interested in, figuring out, and there's going to be spaces, there are lots of space up there in the Northwest, right, where there's lots of open space, right? And basically the criteria is it needs to be inexpensive. It's competing with oil. And so it's got to be less expensive than oil. And so cost matters a lot. So it's got to be on inexpensive land, near power lines, there's all that sort of stuff. So that's what it all comes together. And then what does this committee, are they interested in figuring out, what happens? I'm going to try to talk to Jessica, because communities can be proactive in what they're going to do. in this, and if they start doing their own, generating their own energy and this, that sort of stuff, it makes a difference. So I'll talk to her about it, but I also just, it may be way too much for you guys to talk about. But I just want to make you, it's more just being aware of what's happening. I'm not, just sharing what I'm learning. So
I would love to hear,
Yeah.
like you said, you've been studying where to site solar and battery and farms. And if you have reports that you're looking at or your own work, I would love to see that.
I mean, I'm not really academic. Okay. I've done a lot in industry. I've done, a lot with big computers and stuff like that, but no, I'm not writing a big paper on it, and that sort of stuff. But I am engaging with people that to see how I will have information to publish once I've talked to some other people about, but I'll be publishing. I'm going to try to publish it through people at UMass and stuff that actually have names. People will look at. I'm just a guy. I happen to have a lot of skills, but I'm just a guy. But I'll be able to talk to you. Yeah,
I'm sure you're aware, Kent, of the Mass Audubon Harvard Forest study that came out. I think it was this year, the growing solar, saving nature, protecting nature, growing solar, protecting nature. So that was a pretty extensive report for the state and outlining how we can meet our energy needs and our solar growth needs without cutting down forests. And so.
Well, I will read that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And do you happen to know of anybody at UMass who's studying this in particular?
I'm still getting contacts at UMass. So
There's the clean energy, the clean energy extension people.
Yeah.
Wayne Brieger, and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, I used to work across the hall from them, so I could put you in touch with them.
Well, great. Well, I'll keep that in mind. But there are topics when you go into new tech. I've done big technology transitions in my career, like taking monolithic supercomputers and turning into massively parallel supercomputers. I was right in the middle of that. And when you do technology changes, bad things happen. Okay. And we're planning for failure right now. Let me just talk about a couple of things. The putting in heat pumps, right? Everybody's supposed to be putting heat pumps in their houses, but they're making it really hard. And they're saying you got to remove all your fossil fuels to do it. Okay, great. Let's all do that. Everybody in Connecticut and Massachusetts and Vermont and New Hampshire does that. Okay. Then we go back to December 9th. December in 2029, we have a big ice storm and there's no electricity in all those states. And people will die. I mean, there's no electricity, there's no heat anywhere in those states, right? So this is, you're starting to see bad things will happen if you don't, same thing that there have been 2 years in the last 2,000 years where there has been no sun in the summer because of volcanic eruptions. Maybe that would be a problem if we don't prepare for it. So there are those are big topics, but it also comes down to, there are also counterintuitive things like, well, maybe it's good to put solar farms on farms, not put in forest. That's the level I'm working at. So but it might be able to help some local stuff. So.
Yeah, talking with Jessica and probably Eric as well, that seems like a good first step. And I'd be curious to get their take on how we can assist. I know if the new climate bill, when it goes into action in 2 years, and I know there's a lot of work over this next period of time to sort out the details. So I think there probably is a role that we can play with helping the city be prepared. But yeah, I think it's worth us talking to the city to see where the needs are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot that could be done. There's a lot of improvements can be made. It's
I think that's crucial to be getting a good picture of like what our constraints and opportunities are for siting energy, all kinds of energy, and And the qualifiers for that might be like, like when something breaks down, or if this event happens, like, I would love to see a map like that and kind of have that overlay with our open space like criteria, and then
Yeah.
that's how we get to like ultimately what is the highest priority, because it meets both of these likely scenarios. That's the goal.
Great. Well, our time is up. Just want to thank everyone for participating in this group. We're just, hey, we're a bunch of volunteers trying to make a difference in our little city. So thanks everyone for being a part of it. Thanks to Mary for your efforts, and we hope to see you back in 2025. And thanks for joining, Allison. And I'll reach out and find a time for us to chat in the next short amount of time.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll see you. I may send, after I talk to Allison, I may send out a poll of us thinking about adjusting our time. But we'll see you in January, one way or the other.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for all your
Bye,
work.
everyone.
Thank you for what
I
you're
move,
doing. Yeah.
I move we adjourn.
Oh,
Oh, right. Thank you.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
All right. Adjourned. Thanks all.
Bye, everyone.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.